there's so much money that's in there. You know, if somebody has $100 million more than the other, it's a wash at that point. In terms of impacting the candidates themselves, how they might end up performing their duties if elected, my guess is it matters a lot less to the president, the amount of $1 million support they've gotten, than to the congressman, the state senator, or the state attorney general, judges. If you look at those contests, you really do have single donors totally swamping the entire contest with their money.
Can you see in this current election a scenario in which the money can hurt a candidate?
Yeah, I think there's no question that a good segment of the public anyway is angry about what they perceive as money having too much power over our political system. That has fueled candidacies, you know, like Trump and Sanders, to say, I'm not relying on those big donors.
So how would you suggest pundits use money as a predictor?
First of all, I think it should just be one thing that you look at in terms of the strength of a candidate. And I think the danger is jumping too early onto the amount of money that a candidate has raised. What often happens is it becomes apparent that a candidate is going to win, and that's when they start getting a lot more money. My guess is even in this election, that will be the case. We'll start seeing a lot more money going to certain candidates when it's clear that they're going to win.
I think what we're deciding here is that once we get to the general, we can stop paying attention to the money entirely. Turn off the TV when that comes up.
Look at the polls, don't look at the money. I do think that endorsements are similar in that sense to money. They're really often a lagging indicator. Actually, it is very interesting that Jeb Bush led in both of those things.
So, while you're dragging down money as a predictor, let's also bury endorsements.
Right.
Lawrence, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Lawrence Norton is Deputy Director of the Brennan Center's Democracy Program.
At times, the reliability race between polling and punditry has felt like a battle for last place, a competition for who's wrong first and worst. What if there were a better way to divine the will of the electorate? What if there were a city or town that dependably reflected the mood and preferences of the country as a whole? It's a notion that's captured the imagination for decades. Magic Town is a 1947 Jimmy Stewart movie set in the fictional, demographically perfect town called Grandview.
This might be it, Ike. This might be it. Shortcut I've been searching for. Now look. Look at Hoopendecker's letter, or look at Stringer's figures. Stringer canvassed thousands of people all over the country. Hoopendecker canvassed a handful in a little small town. One little town. Look at the results. Look at that. 69.1, 69. It's just the same, identical. I this might be it. Now listen. Think of this. One small town that thinks exactly the way the nation does.
The film's premise was based on a sociology experiment called the Middletown Studies, in which researchers used Muncie, Indiana as America in microcosm to investigate the forces at work in the nation as a whole. But it may be that an actual magic town exists, about 120 miles from Muncie in Vigo County, Indiana, a town called Terre Haute. As far back as 1888, Vigo County has picked the winner of every presidential election but two. It missed on William Howard Taft in 1908 and was just 100 votes shy of picking Dwight Eisenhower in 1952. Filmmaker Don Campbell pulled up stakes in Brooklyn and moved to Terre Haute to find out what makes its people history's most reliable presidential bellwether.
In a community like this, there is not that much difference in a Democrat and Republican.
I worry about my children and my grandchildren.
I live paycheck to paycheck. I don't think it's different from any other town in America.
They forget us once they're there.
You know, you're not going to beat up anybody because they're a Republican or a Democrat. And that's democracy.
Campbell is calling his documentary project Bellwether 2016. He says his mission isn't to improve polling, but simply to understand the people of magical Terre Haute.
I want to try and unpack what makes this town tick with all the changes that we've seen in American society over the last 130 years. How has this place stayed in sync with that?
Tell me what kind of questions that you're asking to, get your finger on their pulse.
What are you saving money for? what do you want to buy in your future? And then what do you want to see for the community? What do you want to see for this country? What do you think gets in our way? My hope now is to spin that out more into, okay, what are you thinking about the race?
Don, I want to play you some tape that you provided for us of a local barber with whom you spoke while he was cutting hair.
When I was down in Washington, D.C., and people said to me, oh, well, you know what, we're not interested in Terre Haute because Terre Haute, the minority population is too small. It's only 7%. National average is 12%.
Mm-hmm.
How do you relate to that?
How do you not care about a human being? Whether they're black, whether they're white, whether it's the minority community or the majority community, how do you not care? No matter how small the numbers are. Because unless you get total input, then you don't have a full picture.
What do you think it is, if it isn't purely demographics, that makes Vigo County so in sync with the rest of the electorate?
You know, look, some of it's got to be luck. But so many of the factors that are influencing the political emotion of the year come together here. You know, one of the things that Terre Haute prides itself on is as being the crossroads of America. In this town, you have still this strong surviving manufacturing center that was based on rail, that was based on coal mining. This was the hometown of Eugene Debs, the U.S. socialist. And downtown, there's a union hall on almost every other corner. The Teamsters Union, the Carpenters Union, the Plumbers Union, the Steamfitters Union, the Electricians Union, the Operators Union, the Laborers Union. It's an academic center. There are 5 colleges here, and you still have a genuine urban core. You're looking at a county of about 108,000, and a little under 60,000 live in the city proper, Terre Haute, and so about another 50,000 live outside in more rural parts of Vigo County. There's an image that we have in our head that I think of as being middle America. Small town, wood frame houses on a grid layout, people waving to each other and saying hi, and everybody in town kind of knows everybody. That is kind of the reality in Terre Haute.
You describe Terre Haute in rather idyllic terms, and yet the people you've spoken to don't necessarily voice a whole lot of optimism about their future.
That was Strain and Steel. They left. G.I. Case left. Columbia Records left. That's the story of Terre Haute. In the last 30 years. Those were high-wage jobs. And now, you know, everything is minimum wage and a little above minimum wage.
I think it's really reflective of what's happened in small and mid-sized cities across the nation. You drive through neighborhoods where houses are falling down, houses are abandoned. The economic infrastructure that built middle America, they feel like it's passed them by. There's 3,144 counties in the United States. Now, 50% of the population lives in 146 counties. There's almost 3,000 counties that account for the other 50% of the American population. Those 3,000 counties, we don't pay a lot of attention to them.
Well, to that point, of the 15 or 20 candidates who at various points in this process have stood for the nomination, how many of them have come through town?
Well, 0, at least in this cycle. I know that in 2008, when Indiana was a contested primary, that Obama and Clinton did both campaign here.
Change is not continuing the same tax policies of George Bush, giving tax breaks to companies that are shipping jobs overseas. Change is making sure those tax breaks go to companies that are investing right here in Terre Haute, right here in the United States of America.
Certainly in the 50s and 60s, candidates came more frequently. I mean, everybody talks about Jack Kennedy speaking at the corner of 7th and Wabash, which is the crossroads of America. They like to call it the main intersection downtown.
We're having this conversation the day after the Super Tuesday primaries, assuming that Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump go on to win the party's nominations. Let's just assume that for the moment. From what you understand of the town so far, who's the next president of the United States?
You know, people have been asking me since I got here, and, you know, from the outside, I would have thought, oh, this is bound and determined to be a solid Hillary community with strong Union Democrats. But pretty much as soon as I started talking with people about the election in the fall, you heard two names over and over again, and neither of them were Hillary Clinton. They were Trump and Sanders. You know, there's such a sense from a large section of the population of we need to just blow it up and start over again. I think whether this place is a demographic cross-section of America or not, it's a real cross-section of American attitude and aspiration today. And that I think the candidates could do real well to come and spend time here. There may not be a ton of votes, but they're going to hear something very real about what matters to people.
Don Campbell, thank you very much.
Thanks, Bob. Pleasure.
Don Campbell is the documentary filmmaker behind Bellwether 2016 at bellwether2016.org. Remember, there's no A in Bellwether.
Thank you.
Coming up, the worst of the worst prognosticators in a little segment we're calling Crystal's Balls.
I didn't know that. This is On the Media.
On the Media is supported by Moo, offering a variety of business cards and printed products. Moo also offers Printfinity, the ability to print a different image on every card. More at moo.com.
Hello, it's Garrison Keeler heading for Brooklyn for Radio Love Fest at BAM. There to talk about Lake Wobegon, Minnesota, and tell some stories and, of course, sing some songs with pianist Rob Fisher and Christine DiGianardo. Meet me at BAM Saturday, March the 12th. Tickets at wnyc.org/radiolovefest.
WNYC support comes from Heston's Beds, creating beds for 6 generations, offering sustainably sourced materials fashioned into handcrafted beds. Information on Heston's 4 New York City stores and more at hastens.com.
WNYC, public radio supported by you.
This is On the Media. I'm Brooke Gladstone.
And I'm Bob Garfield. So this is the year that indicators have been on the fritz across the board. The polling numbers weren't as reliable as expected. The money chased the wrong candidates. The endorsements fell flat. But focusing too much on the quirks of this election season obscures an important fact. The media always make mistakes. Submitted for your consideration, Bill Kristol. Kristol is the editor of the conservative Weekly Standard, a pundit notable for being one of the wrongest people in politics. In fact, his predictions are so reliably off the mark that they've earned the catchphrase, crystal ball. The premise being that if Kristol predicts it, the opposite will be true.
He was an outspoken advocate of the Biden will run narrative last year.
Joe Biden's going to get in. I'm quite confident. He will signal that he would like to have Elizabeth Warren as his running mate.
Or not. Kristol, a vocal opponent of Donald Trump, uses the hashtag #PeakTrump whenever he predicts that his campaign is washed up, which since last summer he has done again.
I think we are past peak Trump.
And again.
I think he's hit his ceiling of about 30%. I do think we're at peak Trump.
But Kristol's predictile dysfunction isn't limited to this election cycle. In 2006, he said that Barack Obama wouldn't win a single primary against Hillary Clinton.
Kristol routinely admits he's a feeble forecaster.
I kind of like being in denial. You know? It's generally a healthy psychological. It's a healthy psychological state often compared to facing reality.
You're not just making a prediction about what's going to happen. They're making a statement of what they hope will happen.
Phil Tedlock says the reason pundits like Kristol seem unruffled by their never-ending errors is that, unlike weather forecasters, political pundits are engaged in magical thinking.